like to welcome you all back to another episode of Pod in the Park. Although clearly we are not in the park today. So welcome to my bedroom. Um, which is rather fitting for this particular episode because today we're going to be kicking off a little mini series, something that we're calling All Who Wander. This started as an idea that I had to write a book about my life and my experiences and ideals. And I decided that I thought it would be better instead to make it like a living, breathing biography of United Us Initiative itself. Um, so the idea of this is just to introduce our raw, uncut stories so you can understand through our lens and through our eyes how we see this vision of this world and the future and what we can build together through United Us Initiative. So without any further ado, I guess let's I'll just start in with my story. As many of you may know, I was born and raised in Las Vegas, Nevada. One of four boys. Xavier may cut in some pictures here, and put in things, about, how, pictures about our family and whatnot. But we grew up in, what a lot of people think, when I say I grew up in Vegas, they're like, oh, you grew up in Vegas, it's like, that's so exciting, that's so cool, like, but it's like, it's not the Vegas you think of. It's the Vegas, like, off the beaten trail, behind all of the, when most people think of Vegas, they think of the Strip. And when I think of Vegas, I think of rundown weeklies and pimps in wheelchairs and it's just it's a really crazy place to grow up and to experience, living, especially as a kid. You're exposed to so much so quickly that it warps your view and the way you deal with the world. you know um I got a lot of friends, honestly, that, like, by the time they were even like 8, 9 years old, were smoking weed or smoking even worse with their parents. um so it's crazy to think, because I made it all the way until I was like 15 before I even started smoking. I started smoking weed and started smoking cigarettes. um but even before all that, we, at like 7 years old, we moved to Phoenix. I remember that was, kindergarten, first and second grade. I went to Lucy Rowe Lucy Rowe Elementary School. Um, I remember Roadrunner Elementary. I still remember the anthem for the elementary school. Uh, it says, Lucy Rowe is the greatest school we know. Lucy Rowe is the greatest school we know, 'cause we got spirit and teamwork in everything we do. Roadrunner spirit is the best, it's true. So, really fond memories from back then. Um, and then after second grade, things, I mean, even before that, my parents were kind of like back and forth. They were splitting up and getting back together. Like I said, I grew up one of four boys, but we had a little sister that passed away. And losing her was like, it really, it destroyed my parents, like, entirely. Um, and I honestly, I couldn't imagine what that's even like that. I couldn't imagine what they were going through. Um, and still having to carry on and figure it out, because they got four boys that they still had to take care of. Um, so, for all their faults and for whatever you may take from this story or whatever else, I do want everybody to know that, I love and respect my parents very much, and I'm not the way I am in spite of them, but very much because of them. They've made me um, resilient and mindful, um, you know, respectful. At least I try, at the very least. Um, anyway, so at around 7, we moved to Phoenix, and I remember getting into fights all the time, and I don't remember even why. I just remember getting into fights all the time. I remember coming back from suspension and getting into a fight the very next day because somebody said something or did something to my brother, and I had to deal with it. I became the defender of our little clan. Um, and so I never liked it, but I also was not going to run. That was not an option. Um, and so things were crazy. We were in Phoenix for I think like 5 years. Um, and just before I turned 12 is when we moved back. It was the middle of second grade, or sorry, the middle of sixth grade. Um, and I remember we moved back, and my mom moved back first. My parents had split up again. My mom moved back first, and my dad moved back because, like, I guess we were struggling, and we just weren't like. Because I remember the power went off. We were, it was almost Christmas. I remember that Thanksgiving, my dad cooked all of Thanksgiving dinner on what was it, it was in like a crock pot and in like a little electric skillet, and he cooked all of Thanksgiving dinner in that, man, and he did his thing. Like I said, my parents taught me how to mend things with broken tools, and taught me what it actually meant to be adaptable, just not even, and versatile, not just by the things and lessons they told me, but by what they showed me in their very ways. Um, but anyway, so we moved back to Vegas. Like I said, middle of sixth grade, and again, I had to start all over, make new friends. I started choir. I remember I started choir in sixth grade, and it really gave me a good outlet and a good like a place to be. Because home was chaotic, uh, like more than chaotic. I remember at one point I we had actually just at this point we had actually found out that our older sibling was our half sibling, and then we shortly after that ended up meeting their biological father, and I ended up threatening him with a kitchen knife one night, and scared him out of the house. Like I was kind of psychotic, like I didn't know, like, uh, and then I remember shortly after that I met Serial, my brother, my boy, my best friend, um, Brendan Serial, and we didn't like exactly click at first, but once we clicked, that was it. Like we were locked. Me and Serial have been, basically inseparable since. Um, and then through middle school, again, we're just still moving around, still moving around. I didn't, again, hadn't gone to the same school, you know, twice. I hadn't gone to the same school or gone to the school with the same kids, for more than 1 year or a year and a half at any given time, since second grade. Um, and so all through middle school, I'm still just kind of roaming around, but I had found choir. So, that really helped me to again, like, to find something. Plus I was going on trips to Disneyland, and I went to DC with a choir that my mom had got me hooked up with at one point, Helen Joy's Young Entertainers. Rest in peace, Miss Helen Joy. um but it was, it opened the door, and it opened the door and allowed me a lot of opportunities and experiences. Um, and then I got to go to Las Vegas Academy. I don't know if anybody ever seen the movie Fame, or what's the new one, Victorious. It's kind of like, it's a magnet school for performing arts, so you had to audition to get in. And so, freshman year, our summer of eighth grade, I thought I was just that guy. I was Mr. Hot Shit because I auditioned and got into LVA, for choir. Um, so, I remember the summer of eighth grade, I dated a different girl every week going to the Black Mountain Rec Center. And actually, oddly enough, that's where I ended up meeting who would later become my future wife. Um, but, that was a much crazier and longer road than I would ever have imagined. Um, so, I get through, I start freshman year, and I meet my best friend Box for J Jones. His real name is Devin Gerald, or was Devin Gerald. Rest in peace. We called him Box because of an inside joke that we started the first day of freshman year, and that it just was a whole running inside joke that, um, but it was BOCKS, Box for J Jones, and the J stands for Jones, just so you know. All right. um, Man, I miss that guy. Anyway, more about him later, I'm sure. Um, but Box, I'm so glad that I met him, man, because it wasn't too long after that. Actually, it was like right in the middle of sophomore year that my mom actually ended up kicking me out. So you can imagine being like 15 and a half years old, running around the streets of Vegas by yourself, unsupervised, right? Just wild shit, right? And I went, like I said, I was going to Las Vegas Academy, so a lot of it was on me. It wasn't my mom's fault. It wasn't that she like, but it's because I was in the streets anyway. Honestly, I was running around, doing all kinds of drugs and crazy whatnots, and chasing around after this girl Anessa, who I just was head over heels for, even though she was absolutely terrible to me and for me at the time. She's a wonderful and great individual now. Don't get me wrong. I love the girl. If you're watching, Anessa, shout out. Um, but it's crazy because it set a pattern for me, and it took me quite some time to break and to get through. Um, but anyway, the point is that, so I was going to Las Vegas Academy. I was doing drugs. My mom put me out, and so I started couch surfing with Box mainly, and Serial. Um, and man, dude, let me just say, like, to both of my mothers, like, you were, I to Michelle and Melissa. I love you both so much, because without you, I don't know where I would be today. Um, I always say that I actually have three moms, because it was my mom, my biological mom, who and again, she did a lot, and took great care of me and taught me a lot. Um, it's funny, actually, I was having a conversation with a coworker the other day, or yesterday, I think it was, and we were discussing how two things can be true at the same time. And the more I think about it, it's actually how I see my parents, is that because, like, I seem like, I believe, like, my mom is a great person and a great woman, but especially as a younger mom, she left a lot to to offer. Um, and my dad, whereas, I think that he was a terrific dad, all around, at least. Um, as far as being a man and a human being, you know, the things a lot of the decisions he's made, it's very easy to judge and look at and be like, dude, what are you doing? You know? Um, but nevertheless, like I said, a lot of this was on me. Um, uh, this is my story. Um, so I was going to the Las Vegas Academy, couch surfing, running around Las Vegas by myself. Um, and the next thing I knew, I was getting kicked out of LVA. And I remember the first day of senior year, actually, yeah, I remember vividly because, um, junior year they had told me I couldn't come back because I had already become like an attendance problem. I had become a uh, an academic issue. You know what I mean? Like I had become all of the issues you could be, basically, to where they had to, yeah, they couldn't keep me. And I remember the first day of senior year, because uh, I got my schedule and all of that for LVA, and I was like, oh, so I called them, was like, oh, so like, am I able to come back then? And they're like, yeah, yeah, come back. And so I went back, and I got through the first half of the day of my schedule and got to choir, and my choir teacher spotted me and realized, was like, you're not supposed to be here. So she sent me to the vice principal's office, and sorry, one second. So she sent me to the vice principal's office, and vice principal Miss Schillingstad. Um, I remember, she had dealt with a lot of my problems and a lot of my things going on the previous year, and she came into the office. I was already sitting there, and she asked me, she's like, Juleinn, what are you doing here? I'm like, Miss Juleinn, I don't even know. Miss Coda was, she sent me in here. I wasn't doing anything. I was just sitting there, and she was like, no, 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 not what are you doing in my office? What are you doing on campus? You're not supposed to be here. And I was like, what do you mean? Like, and I explained what happened in the mix up, and she was like, oh yeah, no, no, you have to leave. And I was like, well, I don't even have like a way home. Like, can I just stay until the end of the day so I can take the school bus home? Like, mind you, I'm still a minor. I'm still only 17. Like, I've been running around and doing a bunch of stuff, but but she's like, no, no, you have to leave. And she gave me $2 out of her own purse to leave the campus and take the city bus home. And she had told me that there was no way that I would be able to graduate and walk with my glass. And I remember just leaving feeling absolutely broken and just shattered, man. Because, like, all this time, there had been two places that I had, like, determined it. Like, so my grandparents on my dad's side, they lived in the same house since I was 2 years old. My grandfather still lives there, and other than that, that's the only form of stability I ever knew my whole life. And then, I came across LVA, whereas even where I was in the streets and couch surfing and actually homeless at some points, sleeping and living in laundromats and park benches, LVA was something of a home to me still, because for 3 years that was stable. And so now, the start of senior year, I remember leaving there, and like I was lost. I didn't know what to do. I mean, I still have my grandparents, and I still was, and through this time I had been doing a lot of yard work and things like this for my grandfather and for my grandparents, and so it taught me a lot of good life skills and a trade. Um, and mind you, also putting some decent money in my pocket too. My grandparents really, man, my grandparents really have always been there for me, always. Um, and then I started my senior year at Foothill High School. And at the time, I was still chasing around after Anessa. But fortunately for me, I was, because Foothill High School had just started a program that year called Odyssey Compass Learning. Um, and, and I remember sitting there in the chair with the counselor and my dad, and the counselor was sitting there telling me, he's like, I don't know how you're gonna do it. He's like, because you're so far behind in credits, like I don't know if it's gonna be possible. And my dad was so mad. I remember but he was like, he's gonna get it done. He's gonna do it. Don't worry about it. And at that point, mind you, I wasn't failing because I was stupid by any means. I wasn't failing because I didn't know what I was doing or because I didn't understand the material. I was failing simply because I refused to do homework. Refused. Outright refused. It drove my teachers insane. Same thing with showing my work on my tests. It drove my teachers insane because it was just, I never, like, why am I doing the homework or showing my work? Like, I'm doing it in my head. Why am I doing all of this? And I remember, so Compass Learning Odyssey was online and it was self-paced, so I could just go through it at my own pace and just test out of it. By semester, I had open periods. I started off that school year with early bird and late bird classes. And by semester, I had open periods. And instead of taking open periods, I decided to actually begin uh, take a position as a student tutor and a student mentor, um, mostly for freshmen who were still studying pre-algebra at the time. And I'll tell you, it was all, honestly, a lot of it, or if not all of it, is because of Miss Wendy Bonar. Um, and I promise you, I'm gonna shout you out for sure. In the, I'm gonna make sure I send this video to you, so to make sure you watch it. Because and Miss Bonar, thank you, because without you, I again don't know where I would have been. Um, Especially because my senior year, the second half of my senior year, I thought was going to be a piece of cake because I had gotten so far ahead in my classes and my courses and got so caught up in everything. I was on a roll, and I started looking at potentially joining the Marine Corps and all this other stuff, and then my grandmother was diagnosed with cancer, and she bought me my cap and gown and my class ring. And then she died before she could watch me walk and graduate. And then she died before she could watch me walk and graduate. And I had to miss her funeral because I had to take my finals then. But I did walk and graduate with my class. And for as a graduation present, my mom surprised my older sibling and I. Um, and my older sibling, her name now is Cleopatra. And as we were growing up, I grew up with my older brother Tyler. So please forgive me. I'm not trying to be insensitive by any means. Just trying to, so that the story is understandable. As we go through things. Um, so Cleo, if you're watching, please, no disrespect. I don't mean to dead name you or anything of that nature. Uh, anyway, my mom surprised Cleo and I, or yeah, Cleo and I, or my sibling and I, with VIP media passes to EDC that year. And I remember we went to EDC together, and it was the night that I had graduated, and um, it was the first night we had a pool party with my family and all of that. I was drinking and smoking with all my family. It was the first time that my dad and my mom, I was able to just smoke and kick it, and they were cool. And then me and my sibling went to EDC that night and had a ball. Man, it was amazing. But I remember the very next morning vividly because I remember thinking the party's over. Like in every sense of the term, the party was dead. And then I kind of went into a fog. I started doing spice. I started doing all kinds of stuff. I got into school for massage therapy. Um, and through this time, uh, Elaine and I had started talking again and started and reconnecting again. And uh, I remember thinking to myself when she had first messaged me, I'm like, I should not bother with her because I'm gonna mess her life up. And I should have listened to myself, man. I should have definitely listened to myself because she had just got out of rehab and she was sober and doing really well. And she hit me up and we started kicking it, and I sucked her right into my void and my hole. And it was just crazy. It was insane. Um, I remember I ended up getting a job somewhere at Denny's, and then like I can't remember. Everything's such a blur through all of that time. It all kind of blurs together for me, honestly. Up until uh, up until I got Elaine pregnant, and she got pregnant with our daughter Bella, and for a while things were really good, and we were in that honeymoon phase, and then Elaine ended up slipping up, and she ended up getting her probation or something like that. And I remember she got locked up or something. Um, it was wild, man. It was some wild days. Um, but I do remember she got out, gave birth, and we were happy again. And then we got into a place of our own. We got into a little trailer out in Henderson, and that's when things got really, really. That's when things really hit the fan. Um, so I had already been on my own now for like 5 years, like from 15 to 20. Now at this point I'm 20 years old, and you know, Elaine had not experienced that level of like responsibility yet, and that level of um
Freedom.
hmm,
Freedom.
yeah, freedom or accountability, that level of adulthood, um that level of maturity. She had never had to experience or to exhibit that level of maturity yet. And so throwing her into a little tin box with a screaming infant all day while I was going to work, and she was still trying to finish high school as well as work on her sobriety, was not a great idea. And it ended up resulting in her losing her mind and me losing mine. And I ended up putting my hands on her. I became abusive to her, to my daughter, um, and even honestly to everyone around me. Even thinking back, like the way that I spoke to, her mom, and my mom, and just people in general at that time. Um, I was just saying and doing, I was very manipulative. Um, and I didn't think I was like a bad person. And I still don't think I was necessarily a bad person. I was in a really bad place though, a really, really bad place, spiritually and mentally, emotionally, uh, physically, financially. Um, and it wasn't good, you know. So then Elaine got a job as a cam model, and um, she was working really, really late. And the times that she was getting off and where she was like having to take the bus from was not a great area. So I asked my dad to step in and start, you know, driving her to and from work and whatnot or at least, picking her up from work for me. And with everything else going on, I guess that's probably why I was too arrogant to see or to see was, but Elaine started cheating on me with my dad. And she ended up having 3 kids with him. And it really, that again tore me up and really messed me up for a long time, for some time. Um, Especially because while it was happening, we were all living together in a house at one point, and my dad gaslit me into thinking that I was crazy, and so I stopped trusting my own brain and stopped trusting what I could think or to hear and see from my own self. I stopped trusting my own senses. And that's a really slippery slope once you start to trust your sanity, because it's your sanity. You know what I mean? Like once you question that, where are you going? How do you come back? And I remember I quit. I was going to school for massage therapy. I quit that. I was going to um I was working. I quit every job. I quit every job I got within like a week. Just couldn't hold them down. I couldn't keep my mind together. And I remember I remember at one point, man, I was so desperate for just some kind of an answer or some kind of meaning for all of it, that I went out and prayed. It was exactly a week before my 21st birthday was when all this happened. So all of this, mind you, happened within less than a year. Okay, because my daughter is not even a year old by the time all of this is taking place. Um, so by the time it's a week before my 21st birthday, and I went outside and I prayed, and I just remember praying. I'm like, God, look, I don't know what you want from me, or what it is that I need to do, or how, but help me, show me, guide me, please, Um, and I remember on my birthday that a week later, my birthday fell on a Sunday. Um, and I remember getting my answer. It was clear and concise, just as I asked. And since then, I mean, I haven't been perfect, but I've just tried to walk in step, with where he's trying to guide me, I guess. Um, as you can imagine, you know, after all that, I lost my mind for a little while. I was kind of like, I guess, like Moses wandering in the desert or something. And I don't remember exactly when it was that I started to actually come out of that. I went to Job Corps and came back and kept getting back together and breaking up with Elaine. And, it just bad, vicious cycles. then at one point, me and Elaine had gotten back together after her and James had gotten into her and my dad, I'm sorry, got into a fight. And she had gone to jail. And so we had gotten back together and we were together for better part of a year, maybe even a little more. And then she ended up starting to do drugs and drink again and go off the deep end. So I told her to leave, and so she left. I think the next day I ended up taking the three younger kids, because at this point we had our daughter, and then she had I have my two younger sisters, Araya and Rainey, and then my youngest brother Jordan as well. Um, but I got my three younger siblings as well that uh, are actually my daughter's siblings too. Like I said, my life is insane. Um, but I dropped my three younger siblings off to her, and a week later at 3 a.m., CPS came to my door and took my daughter, and I couldn't understand why. But it was because my youngest brother, who I think at the time was like maybe a year old, year and a half, and he was in the hospital because he had a fractured collarbone and like a broken rib, or a broken collarbone and two fractured ribs or something like that. It was pretty severe. It was bad. Um, but I told him I hadn't seen the kids in even a week, but they couldn't determine at the time that it wasn't me. So they took my daughter. And because at the exact same time, I was also in the middle of losing my job, because I had lost my license. That's what it was. My license had become, my license was suspended. And so I lost my job. Um, and so because I lost my job, I also lost my car. And all at the same time, the lease on my apartment was due. So within just about a week, with about a week in August of 2019, I lost everything. Um, you know, and I thought I was just a failure. I had no reason to even keep going. I felt like that for some months and just went on drudging through life. And then I got a call from a buddy of mine, a brother of mine actually named Chris, and offered for me and my other buddy or brother Jordan, from who I met when I went to Job Corps. He offered for us to come and move out to Phoenix with him, and so we did, and we jumped on it. And we moved out to Phoenix, and that was cool for a little while. Um, that's actually right about when COVID hit, um, which is actually even more motivation for me to leave, because to see Las Vegas go dark, to see the whole strip go black, for a whole week, that was just insane. Um, so we left. Um, and we were in Phoenix for a little while. Jordan ended up leaving and or going and staying with his new girlfriend that he had found. And then I went and I ended up actually going and moving to Colorado, here in Colorado. Um, and I started working as a correctional officer for a little while. And I was making decent money, but I realized that, my, you know, Elaine was still kind of going crazy in Vegas, and my daughter was suffering without her parents. So I got another opportunity shortly after that in Minnesota, which I took and was working up there for a little while. But when things didn't pan out exactly how I planned or had wanted in Minnesota, I quickly deviated and moved back to Vegas. And at this point, I'm in the mindset I need to get Elaine's mind together. I need to get her back so that I can help get her stabilized for our daughter. And that was kind of where my mindset was for that. And it took me about 2 years, and I was just at the point of where I was about ready to give up. Um, and mind you, I must say through that 2 years, um, there was I was working most of the time at a place called Fuku Burger. And my boss and my mentor, Colin Fukunaga, again, shout out, great guy, great burgers too. If you ever in Vegas, go check them out. Fuku Burger. They got a location on Jones and Spring Mountain, and another one. I'm not 100% sure, but I know it's a little more southwest, but I can't remember the exact location. I'm sorry. But the point is, great food, and great guy, Colin Fukunaga. Um, and he, I remember, I actually remember I was walking into work one day, and I was just so distraught. And Colin stopped me and was like, "Hey, bro, like, come here, sit down and let's talk for a minute." And he had me do this breathing exercise, and I just started bawling. I just started weeping, man. I didn't know how much I had been carrying and pent up all that time, and he was just like, "Dude, like, you're not gonna be happy here if you're not happy. Like, you gotta be happy, bro." Like, man, I love that man so much, bro. Because again, another just super super human, just regular person that saved my life, and really really, whether he knew it or not, and I'm sure he probably did. But again, shout out to you, man. Um, but anyway, through all this time, or through this time in Vegas, I'm kind of trying to get back, trying to get Elaine to get her head and get her head right. And finally, she starts trying to, like, she seems like she's starting to come around. And at this point, I'm just kind of like treating her like, nah, like I'm cool. But she started coming around more, coming around more. And at some point I decided, I'm like, okay, well, you're still not doing what you need to be doing though. So I'm going to leave again. So I decided to go ahead and leave again. And just before I moved to Vegas, or just before I moved back to Colorado, for the first time in years, Elaine was able to see Bella in person. And so I was like, dude, perfect. Like, that was like, that's the whole reason I went back. That was the whole reason I came. And then I moved back here to Colorado, and Elaine and I were still not on great terms. But I decided I was going to marry her because I was going to join the army. And then, she was, that was gonna help her, and she was gonna be able to get the benefits of that. And we got married, and then the army rejected me, and I was like, dude, okay, great. Um, so at this point, I'm like, great, like, what do I do? Like, I'm married to a girl that I really didn't want to be married to at the time. Um, she's still living in Vegas. I do want to help her. I love her, but um, but I'll tell you, it's crazy. There's actually it's just like the story of it's a Buddhist story, and I'll end with this, because through all of that madness and chaos, there's this there's this Buddhist story of a guy running from a tiger, and this tiger is hungry. It's chasing him. It's gonna get him. But to get away from the tiger, he jumps in the well. He sees this well, and he jumps in the well, and while he's falling in the well, he notices at the bottom there's a pit of snakes. So quickly he grabs onto this root, or branch or something that's hanging outside of the wall of the well. And he's looking down at the hungry snakes and looking up at the hungry tiger, and he's just thinking like, man, this sucks. And out of nowhere, there's these two mice come out of the wall and start nibbling on the root that he's holding on. And she was like, dude, like, just my luck. Like, what do I do? And lastly, there's this beehive high above him, and it's dripping honey on his forehead, and he's just like, wow. So he just hangs his head back and just starts catching the honey in his mouth and just start enjoying it. He's just, I'm gonna die anyway, right? And before too long, the tiger gets a little too eager and a little too close to the ledge and falls in, breaks its neck on the fall, and crushes the snakes on impact. The man is able to climb out and go about his life. Sometimes it seems like when life is falling apart, it's really just falling into place. The quote that we started this episode with from J.R.R. Tolkien, it's one that's resonated with me for a long time. And it's one that my mom first shared with me, um, you know, back when I went to Job Corps, actually. And there's a revised version of it that I think it says, not all who wander are lost, but some are. And some who do not wander are lost too. And I think that's all okay. So if anyone out there watching is wandering, then first of all, welcome. I think that you've found the right place. But also, don't don't get discouraged, because sometimes you'll wander right into exactly where you need to be. Sometimes it's the only way to make it there. With that, I'll leave you folks, and maybe I'll share more another time. But for now, thank you, and take care.